and support the rule of law and those women and men across the country who enforce it. I am the chief, the happily retired chief, Mark Garrett. Today we have a special guest, a fantastic guest, R.K. Miller. And first, before we introduce R.K., I want to thank Mike Wood, our good friend who's been on the podcast, who wrote a fantastic book about the Newhall CHP incident over 50 years ago now. And Mike Wood actually put me in contact with you, RK, and he just keeps turning out one great contact after another. So I want to thank him publicly for that. Again, thanks for being on the show. And I just want to give a little bit of background. And before we went to recording, I was telling you, RK, that it's just the truth. Your resume, your pedigree, your background is so extensive, it's so broad that I could probably spend the entire show talking about it. That's almost a literal comment. But just a little bit of background. You spent 30 years with Huntington Beach, California Police Department, retired there as lieutenant. You're a Huntington Beach PD SWAT member. You were 15 years officer in charge at Golden West College's California Post-Certified Basic SWAT Academy. See, I spent 60 years in California. I didn't even know they existed. So that's how embarrassing I am. President of the National Training Concepts. That's your company. I've been to that website. Fantastic. Anthony, I know you're there in the background right now. Do me a favor. Make a note to link to that website, to the National Training Concepts. Also, and this is the reason we're having you on, is because you are an expert witness on legal challenges to police practices. And for purposes of today's episode, talking about specifically use of force. So with that said, I want to give you a minute or two, RK, to talk about yourself and just really explain to people about your background and kind of what brought us together.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I actually started up in LA County in 1976 at Downey PD. Great place to learn police work back in the day. And then migrated down to Huntington Beach. And as you said, I finished my sworn career there to a degree. But because I'm probably certifiably crazy, after I retired from Huntington Beach, I signed on as a reserve with the police officer, the police department where I live, Orange, California. And I did another 18 years with them, working primarily with SWAT team and the training unit, but also got out on patrol a little bit until I said to myself that it's time for me to step back from that. So with that, 48 years total.
It's impressive. And, there are people out there who've done 48 years in law enforcement, but what you've done in those 48 years, or what you did in those 48 years, is really, it's more than I would ever attempt to bite off. And so we're very, very happy and pleased to have you on. So like I said, a minute ago, really the purpose of having you on today is to talk about use of force and really kind of your analysis about a few clips that we're going to show today. And they all have one thing in common. They all end in an officer-involved shooting. But that isn't necessarily the most, I don't want to say important, because obviously the taking of someone's life or lethal force is always paramount. But there are other aspects to consider when you're talking about the overall contact, between an officer and a subject, a citizen, a suspect, a violator, or whatever we may call them, or the circumstances deem. So with that said, I want to start off with a video. I won't set it up too much because I want people to see what the officer saw without any heads up. And so you can better understand what the officers are dealing with and their mindset. We'll watch the entire video. I think it's about 4.5 minutes long, give or take. And then afterwards, I'll get to give you a chance to chime in and give us your thoughts from your expert position on this. So Anthony, can you go ahead and play cut one, the entire video?
The lights are still back in front. All right, give me 1 second. Yeah. Tell them to roll down the windows too.
Driver in a red Toyota. Turn off your vehicle. Put all your windows down.
May I try Spanish?
Conductor del vehículo rojo. Baja todas tus ventanas.
He was swerving in and out of lanes. He almost teased into a car.
Baja todas tus
I
ventanas.
would try to pull him over, but he stopped over here.
Pon las manos para afuera. Put both of your hands out. Hey, dude. Hey.
Hey!
Baja todas tus ventanas.
What you guys got? Just
He was swerving in and out of lanes. He almost teased into a car.
Baja todas tus
I
ventanas.
would try to pull him over, but he stopped over here.
Pon las manos para afuera. Put both of your hands out. Hey, dude.
Hey!
Baja todas tus ventanas.
what you guys got?
He was swerving in and out of lanes. He almost teased into a car.
Baja todas tus
I
ventanas.
would try to pull him over, but he stopped over here.
Pon las manos para afuera. Put both of your hands out. Careful. Hey, dude. Hey.
Hey!
Officer, please help. Driver in a red Toyota. Turn off your vehicle. Put all your windows down.
May I try Spanish?
Conductor del vehículo rojo. Baja todas tus ventanas.
What you guys got?
He was swerving in and out of lanes. He almost teased into a car.
Baja todas tus
I
ventanas.
would try to pull him over, but he stopped over here.
Pon las manos para afuera. Put both of your hands out. Careful. Hey, dude. Hey.
Hey!
Officer, please help.
Slow it down, guys. Slow it down. Nice and slow. All right. Good. Roll them over. Just pat down.
So I'm going to give you a shot at this. Pardon the bad pun there, RK. But what we saw there, we saw multiple angles, obviously, of the same incident, different cameras. One was, I think, the home security camera. And then we saw, I think, 3 different angles from law enforcement. And I think it's self set up very well. This person is weaving. This 2-officer unit makes a traffic stop. And we have a non-compliant violator at that point. And then we see what ensues. So with that set up there, I'm going to turn over to you and give us your thoughts on this. And we'll talk about what type of a quote unquote weapon the suspect had.
Right. Well, I look at it starting with the decision making and the procedures they followed. And all of it looks fairly solid to me. Instead of walking up on the car, they've made, in essence, almost a hot stop on the suspect vehicle. And from there, they try to problem solve. And it's all on the suspect, how it progresses from there. He's verbally resistant with the FU comment. Of course, he's allowed to say whatever he wants, but it's indicative of where it's going and how the officers are assessing it. I like the fact that they're communicating back and forth, they're talking, even to the point when the backup unit arrives, an officer deploys to the driver's side and then another one to the passenger side. They're talking. The driver's side, the officer comes up and says, "What do we got?" And the officers, the original female officers, are not hyped up or anything. They give a quick rundown for situational awareness, and they're going through the checkpoints as far as how they try to process this successfully. Unfortunately, the suspect makes a decision that's contrary to that goal. But you look at the officer's actions, they're talking in English, but then switch to Spanish in an effort to get compliance. Doesn't work. And eventually, with little or no warning, the suspect pops out. And as we can see from the surveillance camera video, he immediately starts to move towards the officers. His hands aren't up in the air. His hands aren't down at his side. His hands are in a classic shooting position, which all officers know because they practice it themselves. And then from there, use of force because of the threat to the officers as they perceive it. Reasonable? Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
I'm sorry. Reasonable under Graham versus Connor? Absolutely. Because
Reasonable.
the suspect presented what the officers in their mind saw as a lethal threat.
Well, I not that I have the pedigree that you do, but I couldn't agree more with your assessment, and it's a lot more detailed, I think, than I'd have been able to provide. But I agree, the communication between the two initial officers, female officers, I think was excellent. They were calm, they were under control. They had eyes on the target the entire time, or let's just say the suspect vehicle turns out to be a target when they had actually had fire. But and they were able to communicate with that backup of officer when he arrived. I think he did a fantastic job, and they gave this person every opportunity to comply, and he did not. So it turns out, from what I understand, that it was not a firearm. He actually had a cell phone in his hand, if I'm correct on this. But again, it's what the officer legitimately perceives and understandably perceives, and that's what those officers, all three actually perceived a true threat. So I think this was handled in the most appropriate way. And people, this is going to go down, by the way. This is going to go down as an unarmed person shot and killed by police officers. That's what the headline will say. That's what the FBI stats will say. But it does not indicate what actually happened and what the officers legitimately perceived at the time. So thank you for that. We're going to go to our second video here, Arcade. Now, this one...
Could I just throw in one more comment?
Oh, please, and let me know when you're done. I'll shut up. Go right ahead.
In California, police officers have to live and breathe and abide by California Penal Code Section 835A, which addresses situations like this where use of lethal force is involved. And now the wording is that the officer's decision has to be reasonable as well as necessary. So the reasonable comes from Graham versus Connor. Necessary becomes what the legislature put into the discussion. But even with that second word, necessary, putting myself in the mindset of the officers, when someone presents in the way that the suspect did, that's necessary to protect their lives. They didn't have time to assess what was the object in his hands. He made the decision to take that kind of action. They were totally reactive as far as their assessment at that split second.
Well said. Again, I agree, and you're right that the California environment is, if not unique, it's certainly a different environment compared to other states. And again, I know this. By the way, it's kind of gone downhill even since I left a couple of years ago. But in other words, this is a case that's automatically going to be investigated by the California Attorney General because, again, the suspect was deemed unarmed. And so now it has to go to the AG's office rather than just the local DA, the county DA, which, so you have these dual, actually, I take that back. They're not dual because the AG actually takes it away from the county DA in these situations, if I'm not mistaken, and they investigate them. So in other words, there's just extra stress for the officers and the departments, quite frankly, in a situation like this, where I think anybody reasonable, if you watch it, say, listen, there's no reason for the Attorney General to take this over. The DA should be able to do it. But that's just me and my personal opinion in that arena. So with that said, we will go to the second video. And Anthony, I'll tell you when to go ahead and cue that up. But this one really hits home with me because I spent, my 15 years of patrol time with the California Highway Patrol on the freeway and on county roads. But specific to this video, we're going to see on the freeway. And one of the most, I shouldn't say one of the most, a call that will wave red flags or raise red flags with a CHP officer, especially when you get multiple calls, 911 or just citizens calling in non-emergency. Hey, there's this guy on the freeway. He's walking erratically. He's on the right shoulder. He's in and out of lanes. This always raises red flags because your first thought is and should be, what non-deranged or emotionally disturbed person is walking on the freeway unless their car's broken down, they're trying to get to a call box back then, that's how old I am, or they're trying to get off the freeway or something like this. So it should raise red flags, and we're going to see this is actually something similar. This is an Ohio State trooper, and he's responding to a call of a pedestrian on the freeway. And with that, Anthony, I'll let you go ahead and play that one up from 0 to 3 minutes. We'll play just the first 3 minutes of it.
I'll be out, and it's a white male, blue shirt, gray pants. Yes, sir.
This man here is going to get hurt. He flipped his car here a minute ago.
All right, I'll get him. Disregard, that was a truck driver. It's I think it's a black male with a pink shirt. Come on, buddy. Come on,
You a devil.
What's going on, man? What's
In
going
the
on?
name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus, watch out. In the name of Jesus, watch out.
Buddy,
Watch
you're
out.
gonna get hurt.
You're going to get hurt. In the name of Jesus, stop, bitch.
Hey,
Lord, bow
you're gonna
down.
get hurt.
Jesus, Lord, bow down. Don't touch me,
Turn
you're
around,
going
put
to
your
die.
hands behind
Next
your
time you touch me, you're going to die. Next time you touch me, you're
Turn
going to die.
around. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. 5 Team Cleveland. Send me another unit. He's on foot, going down the berm. Hey, you gotta go down.
You ain't dead. That's Jesus, bitch. That's Jesus, bitch. Bitch. That's Jesus.
Yes.
Oh.
Get down on the ground.
Jesus. 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 Okay, let's see. Come on. Listen how strong Jesus is. Go ahead. Listen.
Get down on the ground now.
Lay down. Lay down. I'm strong in you. I'm a Jesus Lord. I'm a Jesus Lord. I'm a Jesus. All my Jesus Lord, I'm behind. Listen, we close tonight. So listen. Yeah,
Hey, bro.
hey, get him.
Let him have that shit, dog. Hey, dog, let him have that shit, bro.
You right, dog. You stop it.
Come on, bro. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him shoot you, bro. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. You got it. Real shit, my nigga. Real shit, dog. Please don't shoot him. I got him. Come on, bro. Come on, man. Come on, dog. I don't want to see him, bro. You got it. Come on, dog. Please, bro. Please, bro. Please, dog. Come on, bro. And then you start the car. Go.
Patrol car. I'm in Pennsylvania.
So just to clarify, in case anything's fuzzy there, what we're seeing right now is a suspect obviously had overpowered the trooper and has now stolen the trooper's patrol car. And this happens, more often than people realize, with physical fights and a patrol car stolen. This happens across the country, again, more often than people realize. It happened a number of times when I was in the job of the Highway Patrol. My point being this is that this indicates the level of whatever the reason, whether it's an emotional crisis. It is someone that's not on medication they're supposed to be on, whether they're on a controlled substance that they shouldn't be on. These situations, we're talking about hand-to-hand combat. And if you have never been in hand-to-hand combat with your life at stake, you simply cannot appreciate the stress this officer is under. So I'm going to leave it at that and let you take it from there.
Right. Well, right off the get-go, if you'll forgive my language, but the pucker factor that's evident was intense for me. The officer makes his initial contact with the subject, and we've got semi-tractor trailers flying by very close, so that's an introduction to the threat level for the officer's safety. And then the fact that he had to position himself right at that overpass. As it evolves, the suspect keeps coming at him constantly. The officer's just trying to control it, telling him to put his hands behind his back. But at one point, the officer's almost with his back up against the concrete revetment that's part of the bridge. And my fear right then was that he was going to be knocked over with fatal consequences onto the ground below. As it progresses, obviously, there's, like you referred to it, hand-to-hand combat. The officer's trying to control the situation, even to the point of he had his taser out when the suspect came running back at him. He hadn't gotten back into his car. He was trying to mitigate the danger. He's asking for a backup. He's letting the suspect run off rather than chase after him. So in my mind, he's trying to de-escalate to some degree, but the suspect's chosen to escalate it by coming back. And I recognize that his thought processes are not normal. He's obviously mental or drugs or a combination of the both. And then that progresses to where the officer, again, is just, you can hear the force of the blows, yes, primarily from the suspect impacting on the officer. His mindset's got to be, I'm fighting for my life. He's lost the taser. You can see it on the ground at one point. And then there's the progression where they're both on the ground. And from my read of it, the suspect's on top of the officer. And you hear the officer at one point saying, please don't. And again, my fear heightened because in my mind, I thought perhaps the suspect was going for the officer's gun, which is a very real scenario. And that threat developed by the suspect is so significant that had the officer had the awareness that the suspect was going for his gun, I would not have been surprised if he had used lethal force against the suspect who was on top of him, pummeling him, doing whatever. We don't know for sure, but that's one reasonable progression that could have taken place.
There's a point there that you can hear a third person, a citizen shows up and is talking to the suspect. Hey, bro, I don't want to see you get shot. So yeah, he's actually trying to help the officer, and the suspect, again, it's out of frame, so we don't know exactly what happened, yes, but he certainly was able to overcome even the assistance from the citizen. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. God bless the citizen for coming to try to help a trooper in trouble. That's a mixed bag, and in a sense, because we don't want the citizen to be hurt, and conceivably that could have progressed that way. But again, thank him for intervening to try to help the trooper at that critical moment. And it may have led to the suspect, we don't know for sure, but it may have led to the suspect stopping his assault and choosing to get into the car, the police unit.
That's a good point. That may be the reason that the suspect decided to flee instead of, in other words, just ending up even worse for the trooper. Going back to that point about the hand-to-hand combat and this officer saying, please don't. And again, we don't know exactly what was going on, but I agree with you. There's a strong possibility that the suspect was going for the officer's weapon. Who knows? He may have had his hands around his throat. We don't know exactly, but obviously the officer is in fear for his life. Again, this is a situation where the stat will show that this suspect is unarmed, but I'm sure like myself, RK, you have dealt with people that are, and we'll use the obvious one, PCP, and it's like they're 5 Arnold Schwarzeneggers at his prime, and they
Yes.
might be 180 pounds or 150 pounds, and you cannot believe there's 7 of us and we still can't get them in handcuffs. People, again, unless you've been in that situation, it's very difficult to conceive of how strong and dangerous a person, certainly on certain substances, but sometimes even just with emotional problems. In other words, how immune they are from pain. They're not even aware of the danger they're putting themselves in. So there's a disconnect, either emotionally or physically, from reality, or both. I was told this in the academy, 35 years ago, and my PT instructors, my PMA instructors try to tell me, hey, it's going to happen. You're going to be in a fight with, this kind of person. Okay, I'm sure, or whatever. And then when it happens, it's like you never even heard of it before, because it's so detached from anything you've ever experienced in your life. My point to that long address there is, or question, I guess, is at what point, again, this is kind of an open-ended question, but at what point does an unarmed assailant put himself in a position where an officer can use lethal force? Not an easy question to answer, but it's one I want to pose for the audience right now, because clearly this could have ended in the death of the state trooper.
To me, the quote unquote unarmed argument is sometimes not reflective of the true facts. If the suspect in this case is on top of the officer's fighting for his life, and the suspect is doing things, he could choke him, as you pointed out. That's a lethal act. He could do other things, including what we alluded to as far as him trying to take the gun from the officer. But you look beyond that, this looks like a tenured, well-equipped state trooper. He has other items that could be stripped from his body and used against him, not just the handgun. And a lot of folks don't recognize that. I suspect he probably was carrying some kind of knife for utility purposes. He probably had perhaps an asp baton or other type of impact weapon. Certainly had his handcuffs. I've seen handcuffs used as a weapon. So the officer has all these on him that are now within easy access for the suspect. And then when the suspect gets into that police unit, in my opinion, he has armed himself by taking control of the car itself. That's a deadly weapon. It's been recognized as such. And then by extension, it's not too hard to look at the contents of the vehicle. Is there a shotgun or a M4 rifle inside? That's certainly a heightened concern for officers, and whatever else that trooper might have with him in the car that the suspect could find. An example, just real quick, another agency in Southern California had a prisoner in the booking area still in the vehicle, and he managed to get through the barricade between the passenger area and the front driver compartment, found a backup gun that the officer had left in his bag, armed himself, and then things went downhill from there. So I apologize for going off track a little bit, but I'm just trying to emphasize that he has armed himself in a number of ways, or has the potential to arm himself, which the officers have to take into consideration as this progresses.
Well, I don't think you're going off track at all. I think you laid a great foundation, for your explanation about the kind of the misnomer of the phrase unarmed, the word unarmed, or phrase unarmed suspect. I think you did a great job with that. This is exactly right. And again, for those of us like myself, and I'm sure like you, who've been in those situations where you think, if this guy gets the upper hand, he is going to kill me. And
Yes.
we may have engaged where I'm the one with the sidearm, I'm the one with at the time the PR-24, I'm the one with the pepper spray. But this guy, I just want to take him to jail. This guy wants to kill me, and I have to win the fight. And it's it's almost impossible to overemphasize the reality you're in that situation. So you actually bring up a couple of good points. Kind of a segue into our final video. The one about once the intercept patrol car, now it's a dangerous weapon, and we're going to talk about this in the next video specifically, and also with the weapons in the car themselves. Like we said at the onset, all three of these situations end up in officer-involved shooting, and we're not going to show this one. One, it's because he's driving this patrol car for a long time, and we're not going to bore the audience with this guy driving crazy down the freeway. Second, at the end of this, when there is an officer-involved shooting, you really can't see anything. He crashes the patrol car. It's upside down. It's almost pitch black. There are a lot of commands going back and forth, but we really can't ascertain exactly what happened. So we're not even going to give that one, the time. But going back a second ago about the assault with a deadly weapon vehicle, this is the final one we're going to watch is kind of like this freeway situation we just saw with the Ohio State troopers, also close to home. Really in a literal sense, because I used to live about 3 miles from where this incident took place in Pasadena, California, that we're going to watch, and know the streets very, very, very well. I lived in the San Gabriel Valley for, well, most of my adult life. And so this really is my backyard. I've made a rest on this particular street we're going to watch this happen on, things like this. But just to set it up a little bit, and Anthony, get that one queued up. I guess it's a cut 4, I believe. No, I'm sorry, cut 3, I guess. It's cut 3. This has a lot of elements in it, and we'll talk them as we go. We're actually going to watch a couple of clips here, and we'll break them down as we go. So, with that said, go ahead and hit cut 3, Anthony.
Where you from?
San Fernando.
Okay. Do you have any ID? Are you visiting someone?
Huh?
Are you visiting someone?
No. I'm just right now trying to get some gas money.
Okay.
Hey, I don't have my ID on me. You have it right there?
284 on the 925A. That's in north of Del Mar.
Yeah.
Hudson.
Okay. Good?
No, I need to see some ID.
I don't have it.
Do you have a picture of like an old one or anything?
Hey, can you send me a picture on my ID?
Or do you know your driver's license number?
I don't. No. By heart.
Okay.
Let me see.
What's your name, bro?
Ricardo.
And what's your last name, Ricardo?
Andrade.
What's your birthday?
June 15, 1987.
What brings you here?
Huh?
What brings you here?
I came to see a friend.
Oh, okay. Your friend lives here?
No, not right here. I was already driving and trying to put I parked, and I swear I didn't even see the one way.
Oh, okay. Did you come out of there?
No, I came this way. I came this way, but I just reversed it, and I seen that car. I was like, why is it parked there?
Oh,
the
okay.
whole time it's been.
All right. You're not on probation for anything?
No.
Okay, perfect.
We good?
284 to specialty? No, not yet. Okay, 2020 Israel, last of Andrade, Adam Nora, David Robert, Adam, David Edward. First of Ricardo, common spelling, DOB 61581.
Huh? In Pasadena.
And then nothing legal inside the car? No guns, drugs, anything like that? Perfect. Are you from Pasadena? No. No, why you got the crown tattooed on your forearm right there?
Why?
Yeah. Are you just like crowns?
No.
Pasadena.
It has a meaning to me, but it doesn't mean.
Oh, you didn't know Pasadena's the crown and the key?
No.
Okay. And so I thought maybe you're from here.
It's happening.
Where's your friend sit?
I I don't know the streets. I'm not good with directions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm facing, I guess, a fucking one-way street.
And you have a driver's license, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It's not expired or suspended or anything?
It might be suspended.
Okay. Are you able to use it for to drive to work and stuff like that, or is it?
Yeah, I had it like that.
Okay.
Okay, RK, I'm just gonna say these 2 words from my experience: bad news, and I'm gonna give it to you from there.
Watching this a number of times, I like to thin slice the entire encounter. This is more than just a pretext stop that somebody might try to allege. The officer sees the guy driving wrong way. It's nighttime, slippery. It's been raining, obviously. So as you start to assess what's going on, excuse me, the officer's doing a good job. He's not being aggressive, but he's being thorough. And I like the old street trick of recording the information on the palm of his hand. That
100%. I have to iterate. Please don't lose your train of thought. I told countless people I did this all the time, right on the hand. And when I saw that, I just felt so good about it because it brought back memories. But it's just good old fashioned, kind of cop protocol. Go ahead.
Yeah, but to digress for a moment, I mean, I remember a couple of times I came home, my wife saw my hand and it was almost literally covered with notations. So I had to respect the officer. He's maintaining control. He doesn't walk back to his car just yet. He hasn't made that commitment. He's staying focused on the suspect, which I think is excellent. And then from there, he's doing that assessment, that verbal assessment of the suspect. Watching his actions, but not a heightened awareness. He doesn't have his weapon out. He doesn't even have it down to his side. He's just trying to deal with a problem. And then from there, the suspect starts to, in my mind, evaluate what his options are. And when the officer hits that question, is your license suspended? That's when, in my mind, again, similar, I think, to the mindset of the officer involved, he starts watching the suspect more closely because of the reaction to that question. And the suspect is now thinking, okay, this game is up. I'm going to have to make a decision here. Do I go to jail or do I try to bail? And not intended as a rhyming approach, but yeah, this is now hitting a point where the suspect is going to vote with his feet or his wheels to get out of there. And I know we'll see that in a few minutes here.
We will see it. And I agree with you. There's some thresholds there where you just see the situation turns. When he, again, is your license suspended, things like that. And you can see, of course, when someone says, oh, I don't think so. I want the audience, each of you to ask yourself, geez, do I know for a fact if my license is valid or if it's suspended? I say 99.99999% of you know if it's valid or suspended.
Yes.
So when someone says you're on a traffic stop and they say, I don't know, 2 things. 100% it's suspended. But more importantly, that the violator is being dishonest with you. And if ever a red flag were to be raised, it's at that point. By the way, I want to add some other things. You articulate very well, RK, about this officer's demeanor and how he had control, but he wasn't over aggressive. I couldn't agree more. He actually tried to introduce a little bit of very light humor, a little light banter back and forth, like, hey, buddy, just kind of two bros hanging out kind of thing as best he could. The final straw for me with this guy was when he lit up the cigarette. Again, I asked people to put yourself in a position where you get pulled over, and it's never fun. Even for an ex-cop, if you get stopped, it's not fun getting stopped. And you think about how casual must you be to light up a cigarette when you're talking to an officer in your car. It may not seem like much, but in conjunction with the other red flags I'm sure the officer is seeing like we are in this video, that's one more. And this is a guy who's either trying to calm himself down because he thinks, oh, okay, this is going to go down the toilet real quick, or, which is just as bad, he's comfortable enough around law enforcement because he's been involved with law enforcement so much. He goes, yeah, I can handle this. I'm going to figure it out. So either way, it's not a good sign. So, and this, by the way, this encounter goes on for a long time, and we're just going to speed things along. But this interview goes on for a while, and the officer runs this guy multiple ways and can't get a hit, can't identify him, which again is another giant red flag. Anthony, go ahead and go to cut 4. It's about 40 seconds long.
You said nothing illegal in the car?
No.
Is it okay we check? Just make sure.
No.
No. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead and step out of the car for me.
Huh?
Go ahead and step out of the car for me. Come on. No. Turn off the car, dude. Stop.
Oh. You're gonna get fucking shot. You're gonna get fucking shot. 35, hold the air. Got one at gunpoint. He's trying to run me over. Hey, you're gonna get fucking shot, dude. You're gonna get fucking shot. Quit, stop the fucking car. I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you. I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you. I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you. Turn up the car.
Okay, I'm just going to turn right over to your thoughts about the actions on both the part of the suspect and the officers.
Well, obviously, when the officer asked him to step out of the car, which lawfully, legitimately, he can do at this point because of his investigation, the suspect responds by turning on his engines. That's an indication of his intent to flee. As we progressed with that, I held my breath, hoping to the good Lord the officer wouldn't try to reach into the car, because we've seen that before, and get taken for a ride while he's hanging outside. This officer had the presence of mind to not do that. And so as it starts to roll forward, we see a different perspective where for a very brief moment, the other officer is in what I call, or what's known as officer created jeopardy. Very brief, though, fortunately, in that he's in front of the car, the truck, and then he maneuvers over to the driver's side, still giving orders for the suspect to stop. He has not only his handgun out, because there's a heightened awareness, but also his taser, which was another alternate use of force that he considered resorting to, but did not. And then the suspect takes off. Meanwhile, the original officer has already jumped in his unit and had to make the difficult U-turn and is initiating the pursuit.
You know, like so many things in California, things are more complicated than they have to be, or certainly more complicated than they are in other parts of the country. And I just say this because it's a reality. And I can't remember, and maybe you can refresh my memory. I can't remember if this came down from the Supreme Court or if it was just in California, but I know there's been some adjudication about finding yourself in a position of danger like this, in other words, in front of a vehicle, and the requirement for officers to remove themselves from that position if it's reasonable, if it's practical. Are you aware of that, or can you kind of fill the blanks in on that, RK?
Well, that's kind of reminiscent of the Hayes decision, but that was a canine thing. But the gist of the decision was that all of the actions of the officers pre-shooting, pre-application of force, could be evaluated. So while some might argue that that officer, again, fell within the category of officer created jeopardy, pretty quickly that's discounted because he moves out of the way rather than staying right in front of the car. When I was at Huntington Beach, we had a similar incident, and officer retained his position in front of the car. A shooting ensued, and that was not a good outcome. In this case, that second officer's decision-making, immediately getting out of the path of the vehicle, is a much better outcome than what I experienced.
Yes. Well, thanks for clarifying that. And it's very interesting because, again, this is a case where at that point, at least the suspect was driving low speed. That changes pretty quick. We'll see here in a minute. But it did give the officer time to, make the decision to remove himself from a position of danger?
Years ago, decades ago, when I started at Downey Police Department, I worked with an old-time street cop, great street cop, named George Schneider. And one of the things he told us was that it's smarter to talk someone into jail than fight them into jail if they'll let you. But in all three of these examples, the officers never have that opportunity. It is not presented to them because of the fact that they're reacting to the suspect's decision making.
Yeah, amen to that. They've exhausted all of that level of force, which is demeanor, and it didn't work. Anthony, with that, go ahead and hit cut 5 for us.
Okay, we're going to be in pursuit. Stand by. Okay, pursuit southbound Hudson, wrong way towards California. He tried to run over a police officer. Okay, he's through the red, southbound California. I'm losing eyesight on him. Let me see if we can nurse it. Okay, we're still southbound Hudson. Coming up to Lake. Okay, he TC'd into residence. Here. Dive. Hey, police canine, stop here to get bit.
So I wanted to play that part of the pursuit there for a reason, a couple of reasons. One, we show his determination, obviously, to evade arrest. Dangerous pursuit. And again, I know Hudson, the street they're on there very, very well. It's a northbound one-way street. They're heading southbound against traffic. A couple of cars had to veer out of the way. It's wet outside. So the officers are, in other words, their pursuits are inherently dangerous. And this one was right up there with some of the worst, even though it was a short pursuit. But what's also important is if you heard the officer that was a primary unit was saying he's in pursuit, that the suspect tried to run over an officer. This goes back to what we're talking about a second ago, RK, about officer being in a position of danger. Can they remove themselves and things like this? So it wasn't just the officer that was in that position. He had a fellow officer who believed that he was in a position of danger. And, this is important for later down the road, obviously. We won't get too much into detail about that. This is a fairly new case. But I just wanted to put that out there for the audience to hear that other officers involved saw the same level of danger that the officer felt that he was in, I'm sure. So with that said, your take on what you saw or heard there?
Well, the primary officer, I think he's doing a great job as far as pursuing the suspect. He's calm on the radio, even asked for a helicopter to start en route. He slows down at an intersection. He's obviously not emotionally captured like sometimes happens with intense situations. And he continues the pursuit in a fashion that I think is professional and what I would want out of an officer that was working for me.
Well, amen to that as well. I agree. He was very calm, probably calmer than I was in a few of the pursuits that I was engaged in. But again, I wanted to put that in there. Like I said, all three of these videos end in an officer-involved shooting, as this one does. You'll see here in a minute. In fact, let's go ahead and play the clip, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So, Anthony, cue up our final clip there, cut 6.
Slowly. So. Okay, go on, slow down. Suspect, get on the ground. Let me see your hand.
Police department, get on the ground.
Fast. Stop.
Hold on, slow
Hey,
down,
put
slow
your
down.
hands to your side.
All right, let me get a contact team, arrest him.
Walk towards me.
Hold on.
Walk towards me. Bring my dog to me.
Hold on, behind lethal.
Put
Let me
hand
get
up.
2 people with
I
hooks.
need to see your hands.
Hands up.
I need to see your hands. Put your hands up now.
Hey, someone break down the dispenser here.
All right. Cover me. I got it. Move up just a little bit.
Hold on. Suspect, stand up now.
Move your arm, Louis. Move your arm, Charlie.
Yep. Take it out. Yep, I need a hook team. Suspect, move towards me. Let me see your right hand. Let me see your right hand. Let me see your right hand now. I do not know if you have a gun or a weapon on you. Let me see that hand. Put your arms up. All right, you're leading. Stand by here. Hey, gun. Drop the gun. Drop it. Stop. Drop the gun. Drop it right now. Drop it.
Drop the gun. I will shoot you in the head. You're gonna die right now.
Drop it.
I will shoot you.
Put it down. Watch my dog, guys. Watch my dog. Stop. He's fired. Flat. Here, bud. Driving. You guys good? Yeah. I'm good. Let me get out with my dog. Put away.
Jesus.
Here, bud.
So there's a lot in here, and I'll be honest. I guess the one thing I didn't see in your resume was any canine experience. Is that right? Okay.
That's correct. I worked with them.
I just thought about that right now. I think it's the only thing besides the kitchen sink I didn't see in there. But having said that, I'm sure you have experience working with canine officers, I would imagine, over your 10 years, as I have. And before we get into a little deeper in the weeds with this final clip here, what's your take on the public's perception, about canines, either, if it's cruel and unusual to the suspect or to the dog themselves, or are they, how controlled are they? Are they effective? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think sometimes the use of a police canine in the public's eye is inflamed by the media, for example. It's not pretty. I've been bitten by dogs in the past, and again, it's not pretty. But if it's an option to successfully resolve the situation when the suspect is not allowing us to use less invasive options, I like the use of a dog. It's been controversial here in California especially. It'll probably continue to. But as we look in the past with use of police canines, they are a tool that is quite often very effective in preventing further use of force. And unfortunately, in this case, the suspect made the decision not to go in that direction.
It's really, when you think about this, having a police canine biting you, and you can tell that this guy is in pain. He's screaming, obviously from the bite, but he still has not made the decision to comply. We obviously find out later that he's armed, and the officers see this. This is going to the mindset of the suspect, and I'm going to let you, cover this in your own words, in your own take. Well, I find something really, interesting here, noteworthy. The officers, obviously, the canine officer has sent the dog in, allowed him to do his job. The suspect is still not complying. And then, after a long time, then the officers identify a weapon in the possession of the suspect. And they, at that point, are still very patient. They don't fire right away. They're giving more and more orders, demands for this person to disarm himself. And he doesn't. In other words, the question is, what more could they have done? And I'll leave that question to you there, and give us your take on the situation.
But if we can backtrack for just a moment to when the suspect crashes, in my experience, quite often the suspect, violent accident like that, they give up. They say, well, okay, that's it. And I believe the airbags deployed in his truck when that happened. So there's an added factor there. But instead of staying in the vehicle, he gets out, You see him in the video rooting around, and this is where I think the FLIR video shows it pretty good. He gets a bag, and either prior to that point or maybe the gun's in the bag, he is armed as he exits the vehicle. So that's a contributing factor in my mind about his mindset. And then the FLIR video again documents how he's moving through what I presume to be occupied houses late at night.
And pardon me for interrupting, but we just didn't show the video just for time's sake, but there's a second perspective from the airship you're talking about with the FLIR. So they have the infrared or whatever, and they can actually see this from the air, and running through the houses, and neighbors saying he's over here, he's over here. So there's a lot going on that we didn't actually show, just to clarify.
Right. And so he ends up, I suspect, over by the pump and filter for the backyard pool, and he's in essence trapped. He could easily say, I give up, raise his hands, drop the gun, whatever, but he doesn't. And so if we again thin slice the progression leading up to that, the officers are doing their job. This is a good response, even to the point of the canine officer asking another officer to be his cover officer. In the video, which I believe is from the canine officer, the two of them are moving up as a team, even to the extra little detail as far as tactics that the canine officer has his handgun past the cover officer rather than closer to his head or, God forbid, behind the cover officer. So that shows me that this is a thinking response by the police officers. And they close on the suspect. We now have 3 or 4 officers, guns up, including with ARs. And the commands are almost in unison. There's no contradictory commands for the most part. Starts off with the canine handler telling him to bring the dog to me. Very common, especially when we have that concern the suspect's armed. We're not going to go rushing up on him because that's an invitation for him to take shots at the officer. As it progresses again, looking at it, like you pointed out, repeated commands to try to get compliance as far as the gun and alerting other officers to the presence of the weapon. And eventually the suspect, we don't know what he did. I wish I could see that. The suspect takes some kind of action that compels the officers to use lethal force. When I train officers for firearms, I tell them on the range, you got to understand that we are practicing to take someone's life. And I try to get them into that mindset that this is a huge decision. And it's evident from the video that they are reluctant to do so. This is nothing like an attorney might describe as a firing squad. This is a methodical response by the officers giving commands, and the suspect fails to follow those commands. One of the details I like, in addition to all the actions of the officers that are up front, you see another officer's video, body-worn video, where he's got his M4 up, but he has his thumb in a position where the safety is on, and it remains there throughout his part. He didn't rush up to join the fight. He was just there to help, and he had the presence of mind like the others to keep his weapon on safe until it was necessary to take it off safe, and he never did. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think it was unfortunate, but it was a reasonable and necessary police response to the threats presented by the suspect. And then there's just a very short segment after the shooting where you see how the officers respond with that awareness that they have just involved in a gunfight that was a threat to their lives, but also recognize that they may have used lethal force to the point where someone has died. And you can hear at least one officer say something like, Jesus, and it's emphatic. He's impacted. And we sometimes, especially in my early days, don't do a good enough job of taking care of officers when they're involved in intense situations such as this one.
Well, I tell you, you're right about that historically, and obviously you came on the job before I did, and I came on in the 1990, and I've heard those stories. I will say this for the California Highway Patrol, that at least at the time where I was aware of these types of situations, and sometimes got to talk to people who were involved in officer involved shootings. California Highway Patrol did a fantastic job with the support system that you're talking about, and I think most agencies do a very, very good job now. There is a word that you use describing the officers, really their disposition in close quarters with the subject, during the time the canine was on him, and that word was reluctant. Okay, I think that's so powerful. They were reluctant to eventually do what clearly they felt they had to do to protect themselves, based on the threat and the suspect. It's reluctant. They were very, very patient. They were very deliberate. There was not a gang mentality. There was not apparent at all. He said it was very precise. It's very coordinated. I hear one officer, I think he said, "Hey, Mike, you take the point," or Mike, I take it, whatever it was. Very specific coordination. And so there's not this overwhelming, emotional response. It's logical. It's very, very methodical. It's so important. And again, I know I keep saying this, but unless you've been in those types of situations, it takes a lot of training and a lot of discipline and self-awareness to behave the way that we saw these officers behave. And I give them a lot of credit, from my point of view, and I think you feel the same way. We wish them all the best of luck, and certainly it's regrettable that this person ended up in the situation he did. But again, it's based on his actions, and the officers were responding to those actions just as they were in the previous two videos. RK Miller, I'm going to give you the closing thoughts on any of these or all of them if you want to before we wind the show down.
Sure. Just going back to the last video, I think a couple of added components. This was in essence the evolution of a team effort to get this guy in custody without the use of force. Didn't go that way, but at one point in the video, I think we heard it, you hear one of the officers problem solving by bringing up the subject of non-lethal. For example, either a beanbag or a 40 millimeter, which might have gained compliance. And under the right circumstances, that would be a good choice. But again, the suspect in this case, as well as in the others, was the person making the primary decisions of how the outcome was going to go. There's never been a perfect police response to problems like this, but especially with the two female officers on the traffic stop, as well as this instance, we have some pretty good examples of officers doing the right thing out there on the streets with what we all know is a difficult job.
RK Miller, fantastic analysis. I tell you right now, I am looking forward to having you back on again for some other expert analysis. Really was eye-opening for me, some of the specifics that you brought up, some of your observations, and I'm sure it's true for the listening and viewing audience as well. Again, Anthony, please link to RK's company, National Training Concepts. Folks, just look it up right now while you're sitting on your phone there. And if you are a law enforcement, I think probably anywhere, and if you can travel, but especially if you're in California, look up RK's company. It's fantastic. I'll tell you what, just go to the website, take a look at it, look at all of the things he offers. It's not just for active. You can be retired like me, off duty, whatever it is. And I think RK is the kind of person who can really help you and me if I get a chance to come back there to California and take part in some of this training. RK Miller, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you continue to do for law enforcement. And thank you for your time today on Your Leo Nation. We'll see you next time.
My pleasure, and thanks for the plug.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care, buddy.
Take care.